No intro into this video. Want to get into the forecast in a minute, but let's go ahead and look at what's happened today with damaging tornadoes unfortunately striking parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. This one a very bad hook echo. I covered this storm as it exited parts of northern central Tennessee and moved into parts of southern Kentucky here. Moved through Stewart County in Tennessee, north of Clarksville, with webcams showing tornadoes. There were many reports of observed debris from the radar, as well as on site on the ground. There were damage reports as well, with tornado continuing to move over parts of Clarksville and the northern side and the suburbs of town. Trees were down along US 41. We had tree down reports over parts of the areas here around Trenton, there in Kentucky, and then train spotter reports showed power lines down, barns destroyed, minor to moderate damage to homes as well in the area near Guthrie, Kentucky here. So just significant damage in that zone. Flipping on over to the alert we had later in the day, that one was earlier in the day, say 1, 2, 3 o'clock Central Time was when we were seeing that storm. And then this one just a little bit ago, 4 or 5, into our 6 o'clock Central Time. This storm was really damaging here just northeast of Nashville in the Henderson area of Tennessee there. Hendersonville, I should say. Cars flipped on Interstate 65. Tornado damage reported in those zones and some significant damage at that. This moved through Hendersonville, made its way on up towards the Gallatin area as well as that tornado debris signature continued on radar, and then eventually the last damage reports there came out of the southern side of Gallatin, with the time estimated by the radar on that one being around 5 o'clock Central Time. So we got to get through the rest of the severe weather timeline as well, but just hearts out to everyone impacted by those storms there. Hopefully everyone doing okay, although most property impacted by the tornadoes might not be doing okay, unfortunately. Moving through central and eastern Tennessee, we'll see this line continue to push eastward. Overall, the tornado threat beginning to decrease into this evening, but cannot rule out any more tornado chances continuing to move eastward. So we got to keep watching this as it makes its way towards Appalachia, through northern parts of Alabama as well, back through Mississippi. This is as we make our way towards 11 o'clock Central. This is 12 a.m. Eastern Time on your Sunday. You can see storms moving through the Huntsville, Alabama region, quite feisty looking there, all the way on down to Tuscaloosa. We can see some of these cells be a little bit more discreet on down into southern Mississippi, and that is part of the slight risk zone there in Jackson, Mississippi, on down to Baton Rouge in Louisiana. So just keep in mind there could be tornadoes on and off embedded along this line, even into the nighttime hours tonight. And of course, tornadoes are even more dangerous when people are sleeping here, so make sure you have a way to receive those alerts. Northern Alabama, we continue to see this line move eastward, damaging winds along the line, of course, as well being a possibility. Again, remember the storm system has already been overperforming. That's why it's important to have a way to receive these alerts tonight, because there could certainly be an overperforming tornado chance. Could we see a brief spin-up tornado near Atlanta into the overnight hours? Yes. We'll continue to see this broken line of storms try to push its way past the mountains there in western North Carolina. Storms moving through southeastern Alabama at the same time. And then as we go 5, 6 o'clock in the morning here, some pretty hefty storms moving through upstate South Carolina on over into western Virginia. Some very heavy rainfall and storms as well. Some of those could be producing some damaging wind gusts. Maybe that isolated tornado chance around Roanoke. And again, this is just a estimated timing using a model. This is 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time that I'm showing you right now. And then flipping things over to tomorrow's marginal risk right along the coast, especially heading towards the coastline. Going to mainly be a damaging wind event here, but overall, still can't rule out some tornadoes. This does go all the way on up to the Washington, D.C. metro area, which could see a flip, by the way. We'll talk about the winter weather impacts in a minute. Through central Georgia, seeing some pretty heavy storms into the morning hours. That breaks up a little bit, but it kind of feeds the front edge of that line with some new storms into parts of Charlotte, North Carolina, on down to Columbia, South Carolina. Again, some of those cells could briefly produce a tornado tomorrow afternoon, so we got to keep a very close watch on the storm all the way throughout its lifespan, including the full East Coast impact timeline. Again, there's that line of storms developing tomorrow afternoon through central North Carolina, going to make its way on off towards the east, but it's connected to this entire system that's just draped along the Appalachian chain by this point. There's going to be new low pressure developing. You've heard me say this several times now. If you've been watching my videos, that new low pressure is going to develop and help to really increase that wraparound flow here in the mid-Atlantic. That's going to help to start up some snow showers here through Appalachia, southeastern West Virginia, all the way on back down into parts of eastern Tennessee here into our into our Sunday late day. We'll also see some snow in the Adirondacks at that time. Everybody along the East Coast, especially the immediate East Coast, sticking with rain then, and even towards 9, 10 o'clock, it stays that way. But we're going to have that wraparound flow beginning to increase here. We'll see snow moving on into central PA by around 9, 10 o'clock Eastern on our Sunday evening. Start to see some of this heavy snow try to encroach on Albany, New York as well. And all the models have begun to show this. If enough cool air begins to wrap back around, we could certainly see some cooler snow or some heavy wet snowfall with that cooler air encroaching on Charlottesville, there in Virginia into the overnight hours Sunday night into our Monday. Moving towards Baltimore, Washington D.C., these areas could see some brief, an hour or two, maybe 3 hours of some heavy wet flakes towards the conclusion of this system, and this will also try to push on towards Philadelphia as well. You can see we'll have some of the snowfall moving through Harrisonburg, PA, on up through Albany, New York as well, right really on that dividing line during the middle of the night, Sunday night into our Monday. And then continuing to play this out here with the slider, you can see we get some more snowfall to wrap back around. Philadelphia, maybe a quick shot of a few flakes, but really looks like we could at least see some brief accumulation into parts of Washington and Baltimore. Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and then towards New York City, maybe getting hit by some brief flakes. My point with this really is just to show you that there will be enough wraparound cooler that you just can't rule out flakes anywhere, even along the East Coast itself here and that I-95 corridor. Places like Boston looking to stay mainly rain with that fetch right off the warmer Atlantic here. Maybe some ice along the dividing line there in New Hampshire and Maine as well. Just very dynamic, and the winds will be picking up with this system as well, because remember, this is a new area of low pressure supporting the system here into the New England states and the Northeast. So your wind gust timeline with this, with the HRRR wind gusts here, you can see we've got area of some gusty winds pushing back around from the northwest into our Sunday morning here over the Midwest. We've got areas getting some quite gusty winds here in the east as well. They'll begin to pick up as the day goes on, especially off the coastline of North Carolina. Maybe some gusts peaking around 40, 50 miles per hour on the Outer Banks. We'll see that right off the coastline there of the mid-Atlantic states. So hopefully no one's out on a boat in the Atlantic here, because this is going to be some really dangerous times there. Look at this, some wind gusts pushing 50, 60 miles per hour here on Long Island, especially the eastern part of it. Moving on up into eastern parts of Connecticut, Providence, Rhode Island, Nantucket, Cape Cod, these areas seeing some 50 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. Likely, yeah, I'm calling it likely here in this region right now with all the model consensus we get there. And then moving on into the Atlantic coast of Maine as well as the Atlantic coast of New Hampshire, these zones getting in on some 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts as well. That comes as that southeastward push makes it to the coastline there, while a northwesterly flow meets up with it. Coming out of Pennsylvania and New York with that low pressure system right there. And again, some hurricane force gusts are likely in a couple of locations here where we can pick up on those highest, potential speeds with this storm. And then we'll also have a little bit of some wind blowing back around from the northwest here into parts of the Arklatex as well, into our Monday afternoon, actually, here is what we're looking at there. And then with our rain totals here, let's go ahead and head on over to those. Some spots in the Carolinas and Georgia picking up on maybe 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. Locally high amounts maybe near 5 inches in those zones, so some quick flooding potential there. Right off the Outer Banks, could we pick up a half foot of rain? Yes. Moving on up into New England, though, that's where it's looking like the heavy, heavy rain is going to be falling here. In Long Island, parts of Connecticut, on through Rhode Island, into Massachusetts, on up into southeastern Maine. All these areas having the potential to get 4 to 6 inches of some rainfall there. Maybe some wrapper or some, again, those are the two big areas there with some rainfall in parts of North Carolina, Virginia, and then on up in New England. And then HRRR model snowfall totals here. Some snowfall hitting the western North Carolina mountains and eastern Tennessee, maybe a few inches there. Could we see a quick dusting, try to make it into north-central North Carolina as well as parts of Virginia towards the coast? Maybe. Again, not likely, but a potential there for just a quick dusting. It's in the mountains of southeastern West Virginia where we could pick up maybe a half a foot. Totals, 4, 6, maybe 8 inches here into parts of central northern New York as well as northern Vermont. And then notice, let's zoom in on some of these areas closer to the coast around Philadelphia. Yeah, but it's showing 0.2 on here, so pretty much a very, very light dusting. But again, this is just to show you here, while you're not picking up much, you are picking up some big, heavy, wet flakes towards the back end of this system. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please hit subscribe for accurate, easy to understand, passionate forecasting. Thoughts out to everyone impacted by the severe weather today, and I'm hoping everybody will stay safe tonight and into tomorrow. I'll be having more updates if I need to tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, thank you so much for all the support, and have a great day, everyone.